My name is Kathy Oberg-Erlenbeck, and Mary Jean Colbaron and I were the founders of the Community Hospice in 1979. Mary Jean and I were in the very first class at Stanislaus State for nurses with their RN to attain their bachelor's degree in nursing. I hadn't worked, I had raised a family, or I had children anyway, who were now in school, and hadn't done nursing in a good 10 years. And Mary Jean was 16 years older than I, and she hadn't been active in nursing either. Part of what we needed to do in our second year, it was a 2-year program, was to have 2 semesters of a clinical experience. And they told us that in the first year. And because there was only one faculty member who had been there for a year, one that came at the beginning of the first semester and one that came a week after school started, and they really didn't know what there was in the community to do, they told us, go out and find something to do your clinical experience in, and then come back and tell us what it is. One night in the second semester, I was fixing dinner, and on the television there came a human interest story about a hospice that was opening in Los Angeles. I had never heard the word hospice used as a program of care before. And my very dearest friend in Modesto had terminal cancer. And so I listened, and I was impressed with what the program was. And so I mulled on it for a while, and I thought, I wonder if there's anybody in this town who's interested in hospice. And then I thought, well, I could do that. I could explore what happens to cancer patients in our town. I was married to a doctor, so I was familiar with the medical community in Modesto. But I'm a big introvert, and I'm proud of it. And I needed somebody with skills that I didn't have to be part of it with me. And then I thought, well, who would work as hard as I would? Who cares about this issue? And I thought of Mary Jean, my classmate. Her husband was an oncologist, and she would come to school on some mornings and say how upset he was because one of his kids with leukemia had died. So I thought, well, she has motivation to do this. So I talked to her at school about that. I said, would you like to explore this with me as our clinical experience? And she said yes. So we got permission to do that. And the next fall, we began our clinical experience, and that's exactly what we did, was to explore what happens to cancer patients in Modesto. I never thought during that semester that we would start a hospice. Maybe help, maybe volunteer, and indeed during that semester we met people there in every hospital that were interested in hospice. But everybody had a full-time job, and Mary Jean and I didn't. So as time went on, it just evolved that the 2 of us would do it because there wasn't anybody that wasn't working. We took our first patient, and her picture's in the book, and each one of us went to visit. And we as a group talked about every minutia of those visits because none of us, really knew what we were doing. And we went, and when we talked to Vivian, we told her, "You're going to teach us how to do this care." And she did. And by the time she died, each one of us felt that we knew her personally, we had cared for her, and it was lovely. We were in the First Christian Church upstairs for at least a year. And because it was a big building, they didn't heat the building during the week, and we used electric heaters to keep our toes warm under our desks. Their electric bill went up significantly. So Mary Jean found us a new office. It was on McHenry on a corner, and I believe it was an apartment building upstairs. It wasn't maybe a story or two, that's all. And then the basement was our office. And in the back there was a big meeting room where we had the hospice training sessions twice a year, and had our parties and our patient care conference too. And we had a very intense patient care conference. Everybody came, and it would be sometimes 3 hours long because we were learning. Everybody who had made visits would tell about the visits and would tell what their ideas were about what the issues were with that family. Sometimes we would generate different strategies for supporting the family, make plans to go to nurses or maybe with the family visitor. The doctor was always there. That was Bob Lefevre. And he would offer advice, but he was learning as much as we were. He's a urologist. We had to be very creative in meeting patients' needs. There were no hard and fast rules for anything. Nobody paid for it at that point. So there weren't any stipulations. There's just those ideas of within 6 months, life remaining in the patient. I found often that people would call long before they were ready for hospice care, but they were frightened. And often the first thought that comes into somebody's head when they're diagnosed with cancer is dying. And we were often known as the people who take care of dying people. So I'd get phone calls. I could go see them. I didn't have to have any sort of criteria about their illness or even permission from their doctor. I could just go, and I often did. And I often helped them sort through what their typical options might be, what they might choose and why, and I just let them talk about their feelings and their fears. Sometimes they became hospice patients, and sometimes they didn't. But I just called that a hospice consult and kept a little record of it. Through this whole experience, Mary Jean and I became fast friends. We went to lots of workshops together. We spent many, many days together solving the problems we thought we would face if indeed we started a hospice and how we would take care of patients. Mary Jean had a wonderful sense of humor. She was really funny, and she had the ability to mimic anybody, and did often. Our office in the first building we had, she had a room with the door open all the time, and I was in the next room. So we could overhear each other's conversations. We talked over everything, every patient, every visit, all the things that we did and could do. I think there were a few occasions when we wondered. I don't know that we ever thought, what have we gotten ourselves into? We kind of knew that, but we wondered if we were going to be able to deal with it, that's for sure. And because there weren't any rules, and we were the only game in town at that time, we probably overstepped our bounds once in a while, but it usually worked out, so that's all right. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine that community hospice would become what it is and maintain the spirit of the hospice. That I am immensely humbled and proud of that. I like to think of myself as the biological parent. The people who have been there since I have had done a beautiful job of raising that child. And I just can't believe it. It's wonderful. More than I could have imagined or hoped for. I'm very grateful that it's still there and that you all are doing such a wonderful job in so many ways. So thank you. I'm Kathy Oberg-Erlenbeck, and I support Community Hospice. Happy anniversary.